Hello and welcome to Horseplayer Happy Hour. This is our show for Thursday, August 11th. It's amazing how hard it is for me to remember what day it is at this point in the Saratoga meet. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatown, not in the Brooklyn Bunker, not at the Little House on the East Side, but over with our friends at the Brentwood in the Farrier Bar. Amazing spot here in Saratoga Springs. And they've got a Mai Tai I'm just dying to try. It says it's good right up on the sign, so you know it's got to be A-OK. And I'm joined this week from that is the tippy, little bit different camera angle, but we're back in the correct space. Many appreciation for last week, giving me my birthday off. The family had all manner of plans for me, and you were able to get me sorted out. Much appreciated. You know him from his work in places like NBC Sports, from his own eponymous podcast. He is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
We're good, man. Happy birthday. We got through last week's show not without some, hiccups, some curveballs. There was a weather delay. Horses are in the paddock. I'm sitting there going, what are we going to talk about now? Are they going to run the race? The run of show that AJ and I had kind of laid out totally went out the window. But that's the beauty of doing things live. I think you have to just adapt and roll with the punches. If whatever happens at the track happens at the track, you got to figure it out on the fly. And you don't have the luxury of taping things and going ahead. But it was good. We had a decent turnout. We've got another decent turnout here this afternoon. We'll talk about that in a bit. And thank you for the pre-tape with you and Haley Amos from last week. That helped out tremendously. And I know there were a little bit of a hiccup as far as the pools are concerned there, but I think they did get a decent amount of handle for that wager. I got involved. I don't know if you did, if you found anything that was appealing enough to play, but
we should look.
All things.
To throw you another curveball, if we have the opportunity to find those prices and look back at them, I think that would be a worthy topic of conversation. There's a lot of threads to pull on from what you've said already. One of the things I want to talk about, and I love, you said there were some people in the comments last week lobbying for the multi-track format. I think we're willing to give that a whirl, but let us know if you have any, especially if you're out there listening to this and you have a strong preference for the single track. It's kind of like speak now or forever hold your peace, because if we don't get overwhelmed with no, keep it one track, I think we're gonna try that next week. You talked about the fun of doing live shows, and we're gonna do something crazy for Travers right here at the Brentwood. I'll do Horseplayer Happy Hour from the Farrier Bar next week as scheduled, but then we're gonna do, and I'm 98% sure this is gonna happen, so I'll just say it. I think we're gonna try to do a live Travers Monster Pod from Brentwood, because I know at a minimum we've got Marshall Graham, Sean Borman, Matt Vagvolgi, Matt Kater from Adelphi Racing around, and I have a feeling we could find some other friends. I mean, what's the max this Travers field is going to be? 9, 10, right? So it'll be a total fire drill. That concept is crazy when you do it pre-taped. I have no idea how crazy it's going to be live, but I think it's going to be great and an opportunity to talk about that. And I think this year, in truth, more than many others, Matt, the Travers itself has a chance to be a key prep race for the Breeders' Cup Classic. What are your thoughts? Am I completely nuts, or are you now interested to watch me make a fool of myself here?
No. I mean, for many reasons, just because that older division, and we'll talk about the Whitney a little bit as the show goes on, you can start to possibly poke holes in some of the horses that we really liked if you're so inclined. And these 3-year-olds, I've said it from day one, they're fast. It's not a matter of their needing to necessarily, we've had many times this time of year where you've got 1 or 2 horses that have earned a triple-digit buyer. Not only do we have a handful that have done that, we've got a handful up into the mid-100s and a couple that have even gotten to the low 1-teens. So it's an important race for many, many reasons. It's also important for 3-year-old honors, because that's a group right now that you really can't make heads or tails of about who actually deserves to be the favorite for that year-end award. So I think this year, more than any other year in recent memory, it holds a little bit more weight, both for Breeders' Cup purposes, for 3-year-old purposes. And look, it's the Midsummer Derby. It's the biggest race up at Saratoga for 3-year-olds especially, but you could argue for the entire meeting. So should be a really good race. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, my Mai Tai arrived. Look how pretty this thing is. Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm rivaling Randy Moss on these shows with his tropical drink choices. You've got something that looks all right there. What are you rocking?
I have a little This is a beer from Peak Brewing. Again, up here, this direction, and it's a drinkable IPA. It's very light, 95 calories. So if you're looking for something to just kind of, have a few drinks and not feel too bad, this is the way to go.
I like the sound of it. It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Where to go first? I did find those closing prices. We started there, or we could go. We started talking a little bit about the Whitney. We could reflect in that direction. You pick a topic.
Well, let's go with the Whitney, because then I think we can tie it into the odds that maybe they wouldn't have been what they are if certain things happened.
Okay, I like the sound. I like the sound of that. So, Life is Good gets the job done. I wasn't planning on picking him. I have been this year the biggest Olympiad fan going. And I went and sat down to handicap that race, fully expecting to land on Olympiad. But it was just one of those things where I looked at the numbers and I looked at the pace. I was like, I'm not bucking this horse. He's too, Life is Good just looked to have too much of an advantage. And, I also think sometimes you get, my personal opinion is that while some horses do clearly have a bit of an issue getting back to form after Dubai, that it's like the most overrated, not really real thing. And I thought that maybe there was a chance there'd be a little bit of extra value with Life is Good. So I was confident in picking him. And, he goes and he wins the race. The racetrack was really, really weird, as I'm sure you were paying very close attention and noticed, because the pop-up storm caught them out. The track was open. That storm was going for 20 minutes on what was already a deep and tiring track, getting straight in there. And then they sealed, and then they harrowed. So it strikes me as a track that, and the problem is you can take my little narrative piece of information there and you can use it to argue either point of view. You can argue that's why Life is Good, despite winning, by 2, wasn't more stylish. You can also use it to just completely excuse the bizarre dud of Olympiad, who ran in spots, got himself into a good position, and just absolutely had no finish. Normally, I would take that effort of Olympiads and be like cutting the line to bet against him next time. But I think the weirdness of the track makes me not so sure. And then ultimately, the other point I want to make about the race before we bring you in to comment on this and reiterate some of the points you've made about it is I do think that Happy Saver being where he was is an indicator that this race was on the slower side of what the speed figure makers made it, not the faster side. This was a race that Timeform had a lot faster than Beyer. I even think the Beyer looks fast. Like, compared to what it looked like visually and what Happy Saver's effort suggests, even the Beyer is fast. And again, I think it's got to be one of the harder speed figure races because of how weird that was to catch that storm in the middle of it. In the end, I think this year's Whitney is a race that produced more questions than answers for me. Pick a direction and run with it, my friend.
No, I mean, look, you kind of echoed many of the things I said on my pod at the beginning of the week that, Life is Good. Well, first things first, I thought it was fascinating when he opened up about 3/4 to go into the race, because I go, this can't be the plan. You're trying to break it open down the backside, not even into the far turn. And then you find out afterward, Todd Pletcher said, I was a little bit nervous. Didn't think we'd be going for home right there. But, but it goes to show his brilliance. I mean, this is a brilliant racehorse. And I know some people roll their eyes when they hear that phrase, but I think it is one that fits this horse, fits Flightline, fits Jackie's Warrior, horses that aren't just exceptionally good and talented, horses that can do things that make you go, wow. So for him to be able to do that and still be able to get the 9 furlongs, yes, he deserves credit. It does nothing to dispel my fears of 10 furlongs. And I can also say, you bring up the racetrack and how it was a little bit on the quirky side for valid reasons, but isn't that the exact same reason that we got from his sort of lack of finish in Dubai? It was a bit of a funny track. I don't know. That's 2 in a row where I don't think he was finishing all that strong in the grand scheme of things against other horses that probably want every bit of 10. So at 9 furlongs, I have no problem with him. He's the horse to beat in almost every race. At 10, it does nothing to allay my fears that he doesn't really want to go that far. And at a short price in the Breeders' Cup Classic, doesn't really interest me. Olympiad, I sat there and I watched the race. I didn't watch it live. I watched it probably 25 minutes later. And I said, my goodness, he was terrible. He just laid an absolute egg. And then I went back and looked at the chart when the race was over. And I don't know, Pete. I mean, I don't know if you prescribe to this idea or not. I thought his run in the Foster was so far and away the best race of his career. I'm not one to quickly throw the phrase bounce out there, but I wonder if he just bounced. He ran such a career best. And I think maybe 4-week turnaround, maybe it took a little bit of the starch out of him. He needs to answer the bell next out for me to go back to trusting him. Now we're at the point of prove it that Foster wasn't a one-off. But you brought up the piece for me. I guess I'll quickly say with Hot Rod Charlie, I talked about it on my show. I feel bad. I'm sure it sounds like I'm the biggest Hot Rod Charlie hater that there is. But I feel like this is him. He's a good horse. He's going to cash checks. He's competitive in all these races. Unless he controls things on the front, I just don't think he is of this caliber to win a race like this. He can certainly run second, third, or fourth. Said he's probably a great underneath key for the Breeders' Cup Classic. But Happy Saver is the crux of the race. I know what Happy Saver is. And him not changing leads, being down on the inside, looking for a good minute like he was going to win the whole thing. I can't look at this race and say I was wowed by it. It made me think that, that run out in Del Mar on Labor Day weekend is going to be extremely important for obvious reasons. But that Jockey Club Gold Cup is going to be very important at Saratoga as well. And I think there's another horse in there, and we'll talk about it tying into the future pool. I've been an unabashed fan of this horse for quite some time. I feel even better about American Revolution after this race than I did beforehand.
That's interesting. I'm excited to hear about that for sure. And yeah, we're going to see what happens. We played a little bit of buy, sell, hold on the show with Life is Good. I realized we could have used these closing prices. We actually used some fixed odds prices instead. And it's just a funny situation with that, the 4-1 that came up internationally for Life is Good. It all depends on what happens going forward with, there's a couple of factors. There's the idea that they could still decide to cut him back. And then there's, of course, what happens with Flightline, because he has the potential. He closed basically 5-2 in the future bet, with Life is Good closing much closer to 7-1, a more appealing price for sure. I think maybe the market in the future bet was more thinking what I think a lot of people are thinking after the visual effort, which is maybe they're going to just go back to the dirt mile and have a penalty kick, as opposed to, taking on Flightline and or even without Flightline answering the mile and a quarter question. But I feel like based on the quotes that unless something goes awry, I do think the target is going to be the Breeders' Cup Classic for Life is Good. Where do you stand on that issue? Which race do you think he'll run in?
No, I mean, as it should be. I mean, this is a horse that he should run in the Classic. We already know that he can win the biggest Breeders' Cup race that there is at 8 furlongs on dirt. I don't need to find that out again. At this point with this horse, I would imagine this is his last season racing. Yes. He deserves a shot at the Classic. And I think we would all feel a little bit, I don't know the right word for it, but we'd all be disappointed if he didn't run in the Classic. I want to find out if he can do it. I'd love to find out if I'm right or wrong about his prospects at 10. He's only done it one time. Say what you will, maybe it was a funny track. I don't know. But the other thing that keeps running through my head, and I'm looking at the final odds too for the future pool, Flightline at 2, Life is Good at 6, Epicenter at 7, and then everybody else is 12 or better. Epicenter compared to Life is Good. Say what you will about Life is Good and his prospects at finishing 10 furlongs off. Purely on numbers, he is considerably faster than Epicenter is right now. So if you're just saying based on those two prices, and granted, part of the reason they're as high as they are is because you've got 24 total betting entries in there. You're likely to have 12 to 14 for the Classic. Those prices will come in. But just until Epicenter runs faster than a 102 buyer, Life is Good is just a faster horse, period. Now, if you want to say that the 10th, that 10th furlong is going to be the difference maker. I'm not going to argue with you. I think those prices are a little bit too tight, but also the prospect of drawing up a classic, right? Flightline and Life is Good effectively have the same running style. They both want to go. They both want to be out there kind of using that brilliance that they have. Well, if they get into it, right? And at the top of the lane, they've gone head and head, 46-4 for a half, 10-3 for 3/4, something like that. And now you've got to answer that question, that final quarter mile, the two favorites in the race, and no one is sure if either of them really want to go that far. Well, I don't know. From a betting standpoint, to me, that becomes very appealing for everyone else.
Yep.
If I don't know that the two big boys can get the distance and they've been going hammer and tong from jump, I don't know. Doesn't it set up for a horse that can rate and finish at 10 furlongs?
It's a great point, and these could both be horses that we're looking to bet against. Of course, we will have a major data point about Flightline and his ability to get the 10F before we have a chance to take advantage of this. But what if he wins at the 10F, but like almost whatever, just on looking like he got it with a good setup, barely got it with a good setup or something? Then the exact situation you describe could be on display. So yeah, there's a lot of horses that you could point to as ones to potentially take advantage if that scenario occurs. Olympiad is one. Do you think we'll see him? Yeah, surely they're not going to go to the Classic off that. He'll either run in the Jockey Club Gold Cup or the Woodward or the Lucas Classic, right, beforehand, and then maybe if he shows that he's back on song, he'd be one that I'd be willing to take a long look at in that market. What do you do with him going forward? He, by the way, closed at looks like about 16-1 for the Classic.
Yeah, I've got 17. He would pay $36.94 for $2. Okay. I'm with you. Well, you can't go straight off this race. You got to give him at least one more run to find out if it was just a bad day or whatever it was. Mott has mentioned that the Jockey Club could potentially be the next start for him, which would be interesting because that'll answer 10 furlongs for him, which we don't know about. He would take on Good Company. Sounds like that should be a pretty good race, all things considered. If I were involved, I would probably go to the Lucas Classic because I know what he can do at Churchill Downs. He loves that racetrack, and it'll probably be a softer spot than the Jockey Club or the Woodward, where Life is Good is going to go at Aqueduct. I don't know. I would be of the opinion with Olympiad at this point. Let me get some fitness into him where, I don't want to just train him up to it from here, but B, I want to get the confidence back. I want to see a big race. And then, if we get to Keeneland in November and he doesn't pass the acid test, well, you know what? So be it. But I don't know that I need to necessarily find out and go hammer and tong again with Life is Good, a rematch of that race, 8 weeks from now at Aqueduct. I'd rather kind of take the path of least resistance and then get to the showdown. We talk about the prep season for the 3-year-olds. Use it as a prep. Don't get involved in a race that you don't have to. You already know that the horse on his best day is one of the better ones. Let's get the confidence back into him. Let's get him back on the right foot and move on from there. That would be my call on him. I'm not ready to say he can't run. I think he's definitely interesting. 17-1, it doesn't really move the needle a ton for me, but at the same time, I wouldn't talk anyone off that number, put it that way.
Yeah, I think everything you said is right. And one of the most repeated axioms in the 8 actually years we've been doing these shows is talking about the angle. Bill Mott with a target. I think, he'll be building back from the Breeders' Cup Classic, and whatever you see the next time this horse runs, you'll unless it's all gone wrong, you're gonna see better in the second start off whatever the next one is. So we'll see how that goes. Let's talk turkey on American Revolution for a minute, though. What is it? Why has this? I mean, you've made the point about maybe a favorable setup, proficient at the distance, but make the case for him a little bit more.
Well, so this goes back to last year. I thought his cigar mile was really, really strong in the grand scheme of things, because when I watched this horse, he was hard ridden for the final half mile of the race. Looked like he might run last, and he still won somehow, and he beat a good field. And I thought, for me, again, I sound like a broken record. When horses do things that they don't want to do necessarily, and they can still win or be successful doing so, that to me speaks volumes about what a horse's scope is. So when they got him out to 1 1/8 miles, I think that's what he wants. And frankly, I think he wants to go longer. I think he is a true 10 furlong horse. And I thought his Stephen Foster was good. And I think we're of the mindset this day and age that if you lose, all of a sudden you're no good.
Yeah.
And I think that's just such a short, narrow-minded way of looking at things. I thought, yes, he had the run of the race in the Foster, and he still couldn't run down Olympiad. But it was his second start of the season, his second start in 7 months. I think he's going to continue to improve. And after I watched the Whitney, I looked at that and said, his workout buddy in the mornings has been Happy Saver. And I'm not a workout, aficionado. But to me, to my eye, American Revolution was always had Happy Saver in his back pocket. It was as if he was just out there going for a cruise. So I watched that race and I go, Happy Saver could have won, or American Revolution could have won the darn thing. They wanted to wait. I understand. Same ownership as Life is Good. You come back at 10 furlongs, which is kind of what I wanted all along. Run him in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. If he doesn't do what I think he can do, then fine. I was wrong. But I think he's going to run a big, big race Labor Day weekend. I'll be up there, thankfully, looking forward to it. I like that he is just as proficient on a wet track as he is on a dry track. And I do genuinely think that the distance is his friend compared to Life is Good, who I don't think it is. Flightline will find out if it is. Olympiad needs to answer the question, what the hell happened in the Whitney? I think Country Grammar makes all the sense in the world, but 12-1 on a future ticket doesn't do anything for me. And then the 3-year-olds who need to run faster. American Revolution has run fast races. I think the distance is his friend, and I got him at 32-1. To me, from a betting standpoint, it was a no-brainer.
I mean, you make a very compelling case. This is a horse.
Oh, by the way, there's Todd Pletcher.
Yeah, we've heard of him.
We know.
He does a nice job, and it's nice having him with, where that's the funny thing about some of these biggest name trainers. They don't, when they have another horse that everybody's falling all over themselves to bet, even they can be good value with their second or third horse in a race. So I'm liking the cases you're making on American Revolution. Any other observations, either positive or negative, with how this Breeders' Cup future wager closed? There will be another one, and we'll be promoting it here on Horseplayer Happy Hour and all across the In the Money Media Network as well. I'll take a little bit of a look and see when that is. But just to open it up to the widest possible topic of conversation, let's start here. Did you make any other bets?
No, just on American Revolution. There were 2 other horses that I was interested in that I didn't pull the trigger on. One of them was Country Grammar. I'm hopeful this is, and again, you're right. We'll have a number of data points between now and the first Saturday in November to go off of before the races run. But for Country Grammar to close as the 4th choice individually, I think is a little, I don't want to say disrespectful, but I mean, this is a horse that is on his best day. I think at 10 furlongs is probably as good as anyone. I thought his San Diego was a perfect prep for the P Classic. I think Flightline's going to have to earn it. I think Country Grammar is going to run his race. I didn't go with him at 12, though. And of the 3-year-olds, the one that I'm very, very interested in, not just because he was good to me in New Jersey, I think Cyberknife's going the right way. And if he keeps putting the mental piece together, he has the running style, I think, that could be beneficial for a race like the Classic if the pace heats up. He's in good hands. Cox has won a Classic before. Flo's won big races all over the place. Of the 3-year-olds, Cyberknife is the one that right now I'm most interested in. He closed at 17, still a little light for me. But I think he's got a giant chance in the Travers if they go there.
Where do you think he'll run next? Because remember, we also have the BetMakers Bonanza if he decides to run against his stablemate in the Travers. $1 million should a horse win the Haskell Stakes, the Travers, and the Breeders' Cup Classic. But I feel like the last time we talked, and a bunch of other people I've talked to seem to think that, Cox doesn't like to run them against each other, and they'll probably go Pennsylvania Derby. What's your thought on where he will go? What's your thought on where he should go?
My initial thought was Pennsylvania Derby, but then I read a quote, I believe in the Racing Form, and Cox was quoted about a week or so ago saying that it was the Travers that he was going to run in. And to me, that is an extreme vote of confidence. If they run in the Travers at 10 furlongs, because keep in mind, again, I brought it up, and I know we've got about 3 minutes to post until our race here, part of the contest. This is still a division that's wide open as far as year-end awards are concerned. And Cyberknife has 2 grade 1s to his name. If he wins the Travers against the Derby winner, possibly against the Preakness winner, against the Jim Dandy winner and the favorite in the Derby and the Preakness, if he beats all of those horses and gets his 3rd grade 1, he is the leader in the division. So I think I would do it. I would run in the Travers, assuming the horse is going well. That's where I would go with him.
A million reasons for them to do so. So we know how that goes. Few other thoughts here. I'm just trying to get that ugly looking muted thing off the screen. So you see, producer Craig has just gotten married. He's on his honeymoon. Producer AJ, he's on vacation as well. So today we're stuck with producer PTF, which is not good. You don't get the theme music. You're lucky to get any graphics at all. So I apologize in advance for any mistakes I've made. Let's talk about the Saratoga race real quick, Matt. Who did you end up picking? Obviously, a bunch of scratches here. Who do you like to win, and who would you have played in the contest, do you think? And hopefully they're the same horse.
Yeah, key scratches. I love the tote board. I mean, it's wide open. All 5 horses between 5-2 and 9-2. I chose to go with the 6, Clayton the Lionheart, simply because he really feels like a Saratoga lover. I mean, in the big picture, he's a bit of a nibbler. He's 3 for 27 lifetime, 11 times second or third, but he's been 5 times in the exacta from 6 starts at Saratoga with 3 wins. So mile and an eighth isn't an issue for him. I think he can get a decent trip in here. Should be forwardly placed. 3-1's fair. I would go with the 6, Clayton the Lionheart.
We're on the same horse. 3rd time off the layoff for the flying form of Phil Bauer barn. Love it when an under the radar barn gets hot. The market doesn't necessarily cotton to them in the same way. And I think should be able to get a very good trip, probably second flight, but tactical position, should be able to finish. The other one I was a little bit interested in was Truculent, on the thought that he could prove to be the main speed for Maker and Ortiz. What are these courses looking at in price? I mean, I'll tell you what. I mean, at 7-2, the both of them, this might be a fun situation to get some doubles started or something. Those both sound like okay prices to me. What did you make of the 2 that are the favorites here, the 1 and the 8?
My fear with Air Attack had more to do with the pace scenario than anything else. I mean, this one had a really hot pace to run out of Belmont last time out, and he's not going to get that. I don't think that means he's incapable of winning, but an off the pace type in a race that's seemingly void of pace, I don't love that at 2-1. The outside runner, I probably shouldn't be surprised that is taking the money that he is, but to me, you're banking on getting back to the low 90 figs this one earned at Aqueduct, and I suppose that's possible. First off, the claim from Norm Cassie's barn, but it seems a little light for me. I wouldn't have wanted anything less than that sort of 3-1, 7-2 range. I'm with you. I like the 5 and the 6. I will say, I think Grump's Little Tots, we've talked about Charlie Baker in the past. I mean, I feel like this is a horse that, yes, stepping up in class, but I think is trending the right direction. And if this is a field by and large that's, but many of them have seen their best days behind them, and, they've lost races, safe to say. Grump's Little Tots could be a little appealing if you're looking for a decent price. I mean, again, the longest shot in a 5-horse field at 5-1. But I'm curious. You said you think Clayton the Lionheart's going to be in that second flight. I'm hopeful that Leperoux is a little aggressive. I'd like this one to take up kind of a pressing trip, no?
I mean, consider the words you just said about Leperoux being aggressive and tell me what you think is going to happen. I mean, it's possible, but I mean, I think, certainly a rider who'd rather grab than hold, or rather grab than send. So I don't know. I mean, under the right rider, I'd say, yeah, glue to the throat latch. And you never know. If the tactics are just to go, he could also dead send. But I don't see him in that. And maybe he'll prove me wrong right here. But I don't see him in that attacking just off position. I think they'll either go or they'll, sit. And hope they can attack the speed on the turn. We shall.
So I guess piggybacking off that, who do you think goes?
I mean, it feels to me like that other horse, just looking at pace figures, it makes the most sense. The 5 Truculent.
Yeah, I could see that absolutely, especially off the claim for Maker. I've talked about it with many people before, but races where paces look pedestrian can all of a sudden run completely opposite, and you get 3 or 4 of them that send
handicap too. You can't forget that.
So I'll be curious to see. I would like to see the 6 be relatively close, but your point is valid. Certain riders are good at certain things.
Yeah, it could be a commentator's curse thing where he's now just going to sit off his hip and do his thing. Quick comment that we got that I'll share about the Farrier Bar. Rob Capalbo saying he can't wait to be back there, and he had awesome drinks here a couple of weeks back. Speaking of which, I want to reload with a drink. Marcus, what should I drink? You pick. It could be a beer, it could be anything. They're off at Saratoga, and of course, we knew this was going to happen. You're getting the trip that you wanted. It looks like. Let's see though if he holds back into the turn here. No, he is truly pressing. Mr. Leparoux is aboard Clayton the Lionheart. But we'll see now. He still has an opportunity to grab here as the 5's getting a length there. But no, he's in. These horses are in great positions. This is exactly in terms of these two being ahead of the rest of the field that I wanted to see with that double idea. I didn't end up getting time to put a double together. I just actually did a double win bet.
IPA or cider?
Let's go IPA. Oh, and these are my boys from Brooklyn, Threes Brewing Company. Awesome.
Now look in Clifton Park, New York.
Oh, is that right? They're brewing up here now? Very cool.
Now, just as the race is unfolding, 49-2 for the half. I like that both of the front two riders are trying to get a little separation right now. This is when I feel like races need to be broken open with speed horses or horses that have a tactical edge. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to get away from them, but that's when you're supposed to do it. With about a half mile to go, if you think it's going to turn into a stamina test, open up, make them come and run you down. Don't wait and then try to sprint home, because guess what? More often than not, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's the old inviting the closers into the race. The problem is, doesn't look like either one of them is going to be good enough, but I do think they both rode it. They probably both rode it correctly. I think they were trying to back it down and turn it into a match race. And Air Attack had other ideas, though.
I mean, the 6 isn't out yet.
With the second run,
yeah.
It's these mile and an eighth. I sometimes forget these mile and an eighth dirt races. Again, you get the opportunity to see some real stamina. That was super interesting on the 6. I mean, that horse ran absolutely huge in this spot, and major props to Leparoux. I want to watch that again. Around the turn, I thought he was in a lot of trouble, but just found an impressive amount and had no time for the idea that Air Attack was going to put that race to bed with that move around the turn. Once they straightened out in the lane, it was a one-horse race, and hey, we got ourselves a winner. That's a good thing.
So now, this is just my view of it, is Air Attack made that wicked move up the inside, but to me, it was a bit of a burst where, okay, that's when you went. You pushed the button, what you had, you emptied the tank. Yep. The problem is you still had 3/8 of a mile to run, all right, we're inside the quarter pole. You get my point. Just outside the 8th pole, 3/16. The idea of you still had to continue on. And while the 6 may not have looked the flashiest out there, the distance was never going to be a problem. So horse coming out of 1.25 mile races, multiple 1.25 mile races. I know the last run at Churchill wasn't, but this one has, the bottom was never going to be the issue. So when Air Attack flattened out, I mean, he was never going to get the job done. And he flattened out outside the 16th pole.
Yeah, that really did look. Now, I'm trying to remember, I'm going to have too many windows open to check. In Air Attack's form, what were his prospects of getting 9? Has he run well at 9 furlongs before?
I mean, he's won at it, but he's not. I don't look at him and think, slam dunk at 9. He did really well last time out. That was a 1-turn mile and a 16th at Belmont. That's apples to oranges compared to 9 going 2 at Saratoga. He did run, in the stud muffin, 1 3/8 2 starts back, but he was a well-beaten second in there, non-threatening, and he didn't earn a particularly fast fig. And I guess the other thing, too, is this is a horse that probably was bet off of that 99 last out, because prior to that, I mean, you've got to go back to, and this horse, to be fair, did win the stud muffin last year in 21 at 1 3/8. But again, Aqueduct in the winter, do with it what you will. That was the last fast fig prior to that claiming race last out at Belmont. Prior to that, the horse had earned a bunch of figs in the low 80, high 70 range. So, but to me, more importantly, visually, it looked like a horse that you've got your shot, you run it, you think of like a turf horse. And to be fair, the race was kind of run like a turf race.
It was. He quickened off a slow pace like a turf horse sometimes does. And then, I mean, I wanted it to be, he was wanting for stamina, but I think it might be more about just the efficiency. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We talk about that a lot. Like, it's easier to run similar pace numbers, to have two slow ones and a really fast one. You know, a really good horse off a slow pace is supposed to, like, at least keep going somewhat. But, you know, Clayton the Lionheart, I think in the end, Leparoux, I mean, he really did a fantastic job not being too far back, letting that horse go, not getting caught up, and knowing what was under him and having plenty of finish. It was, I wasn't really knocking him before the race. It was more just making an observation about his tendencies. But I mean, he looked world class in that race to me. Leparoux did.
And by the way, and this is a horse that is now 4 for 28 lifetime, and is 4 for 7 at Saratoga.
I mean, what does that tell you? He is a true.
If you ever doubted horse for course, this is case in point.
He's a good one. And also, we talk about the short-term fluctuations of form. We see Phil Bauer there. He's had dinner in the backyard at the little house on the east side. Not someone I'm close with, but certainly friendly with. And good to see him just on this absolutely massive tear. I'm going to wait till the prices come up. We'll look at those prices, and then we'll pivot and look ahead to some weekend racing. We also, I want to highlight, have Win in Your In action early next week from York. We've got, I think, 3 Win in Your In races from York. We're going to do a pod on the whole festival, and we've got a great lineup. I'm going to record it on Sunday, maybe drop it Sunday night. We've got our man who's been on these airwaves a bunch, Callum Hellawell. He's going to be in there with us. And then we've got, Matt gives the thumbs up, and we've got Michael Adolphson, who's done such a great job on these airwaves too, and done a lot of work for the Breeders' Cup Notes team and on TV in Dubai. Clayton the Lionheart gets the job done, 860, 380, 250. Air Attack does hang on for second, 380 and 240 under jockey Manny Franco. And third place was number 8, Winter Pool, returning 260. And that will conclude coverage, the live coverage of Saratoga stuff. As we continue.
By the way, Pete, I know it didn't work out for him, but a slick ride from Franco.
Yeah,
to be able to shoot up the wood.
He did the best he could, you know.
Yeah.
I've been paying that much attention today. Is the inside okay? Like I haven't.
I'm right there with you. I had a phone call with the powers that be at NBC earlier, so I was not privy to watching the spa this afternoon.
I'm sure they were just praising you for all your fine work.
We were game planning.
Good. What will your next, speaking of that, I assume your next coverage with them will probably be for Breeders' Cup Win in Your In action, so it ties in nicely to the show. What's next on the agenda for you?
So my next NBC show will be Labor Day weekend up at Saratoga for the Jockey Club. But before that, and I guess it's officially. I'm going to Woodbine.
Anybody what Matt's about to say, because he might be speaking out of turn. But just don't tweet it. We'll be fine.
I'm going to Woodbine next weekend to work the Queen's Plate.
Oh, fabulous! I love the Queen's Plate.
I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to get up there, and I think it should be a good time. Really looking forward to. That's one race that I've yet to take in person, and it sounds like it should be a great field this year. I'm doing my homework on all things Woodbine over the past few days, so I think that should be a good time. But I've got that coming up. Then
for our coverage, you've just gotten yourself. No good deed goes unpunished. We're going to now pull you in to our Woodbine coverage. We'll be doing a couple of shows. We'll be doing something early in the week and late in the week on it. Obviously, Woodbine, one of our biggest clients over here, and that Canada's richest race, $1 million. And we'll see if anything can touch. I got to see how it looks on paper, but that filly that won the Oaks might be going there a heavy favorite based on that performance. It's going to be Moira. Was that her name?
Yes.
Can't wait to talk more about that. That's great. Can you say who the client is for that?
Not I mean, it's not Woodbine. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
the track. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting up there and checking that out. I've got that on the docket, and then we've got Win in Your In for the Jockey Club. Following week, I'll be in studio in Connecticut talking about Kentucky Downs. That should be fun. I will not be down there, but
coverage on that too. So yeah, this is very good. This is making me happy.
We've got a number of things coming up. August has been relatively quiet or since Haskell, but from next week on through the Breeders' Cup, it's going to be all systems go. Yeah.
All right. Well, good stuff. Let us know if you can't make a horse player happy hour. Let me know when we can accommodate. I know how it gets with travel.
There will be one.
Okay. But you've been a rock. You've been. I mean, I've missed two. So you've got you've built up a lot of nice equity.
I got equity. Yeah, right.
Problem. Yeah. Maybe we'll bring Michelle you back to call a racer too.
Absolutely.
If the timing works out, that's always fun. I think we should look ahead to the races, the win and you're in races this weekend. Do you want to start at Churchill Downs or do you want to start at Saratoga?
No, let's start at down beneath the Twin Spires because I'm very curious on your take about this race.
Yeah, well, it's so different than it's been in other years. Of course, it's the Arlington Million, and we're not at Arlington, and obviously there's a lot of questions about the turf course. I think probably that's a big part of the reason why we haven't seen the European participation that has marked this race in the past. Though we do have one runner in the form of Lily Pond, who's made the journey over. Aidan O'Brien and the Coolmore team. Just there's such great supporters of all this kind of cross pollination that we have. We'll have a nice little write up on the blog with our man Stephen Bonnick and of course Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters. Oh my God, I blew the line. Top 10 pro punters in the UK today, who's been doing these amazing figure equivalencies that have been working out so well. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting looking race. I was curious to see what Princess Grace is interesting to me from a pace point of view, potentially looking at pace figures. You can make a case that Dalika is supposed to be out in front of her, but I'm not quite sure what to make of her recent form. And stopping to a walk in the Diana makes me think maybe they'd use more hold-up type tactics. Do you think there's a chance Princess Grace could get loose in here?
Well, I mean, first thing, just for the record, the Beverly D is the win in your in. That's the race we're talking about here, not the Arlington Million.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said that.
No, just purely for clerical pieces. But no, so the pace is the most interesting factor of this race, in my opinion, because I think you can poke holes in almost all of them to a degree. But really the question is who's going to go. If Princess Grace can get out there on a softer lead, then she's certainly dangerous. I don't know that I've seen a forward move as a 5-year-old from her form last year, which I thought was really rock solid. Family Way, I like the tactical ability, but I don't know that I look at her and think superstar. That field in the New York hasn't come back spectacular. It's been fine, but not great. You look down on the inside, Dalika, I'm with you. I feel like she's supposed to go. Now, I don't know if they're going to send her, but I'd be very interested to see what kind of role she plays in the pace. To me, it boils down to the outside too. It's either Rougier or it's Lily Pond. Rougier, more and more, I'm just questioning if she wants firm turf. I just don't think that's actually her bread and butter. You take a look at her form overseas and you take a look at her form. Granted, she's had firm turf in all 4 of her starts here. I still maintain the Boguet was visually spectacular. I don't know what's going on with her with the other 3. I know Chad was quoted saying, I wonder if certain turf was too firm. I think she still has a chance in a race like the Filly and Mare Turf at Keeneland in the fall, where you're going to get some softer turf, even if the weather's relatively dry. It's just that time of year, it's going to be a little bit softer there than what we've got rock hard turf in New York in the summer. But having said that, Lily Pond, I think, both from a running style standpoint and just overall the impression I got from this one, she's a 3-year-old. O'Brien's done this in the past. I'm not saying she's Santa Barbara-esque like what we saw last year, who was so fantastic. But I thought her run in the Killboy was really strong. She took pressure. She put that other horse away. Let me rephrase that. She sat just off of her stablemate, took over from her, took some heat, and then still kicked away at the end. And with the murkiness of this pace scenario, I think she's going to be prominent. And I don't know. I mean, if it purely turns into a stamina test, I have more faith in her than I do many of these girls. So it's going to be Lily Pond in here for me, but acknowledging that I still believe in Rougier. I think there's still a possibility that with a little bit of give in the ground, she could be a player in November.
What is the weather looking like in Kentucky for the next few days? Because the point that I think backs up this idea, and it's very unusual for one of these horses that gets purchased from overseas for them to miss in terms of picking one that isn't suited to USA conditions. We've seen so many of them come over, and they typically are they typically all run well, right? So it would be a weird miss. But when you look at just one little data point from the Bogey, it is interesting. Timeform US does the designations in a more detailed way. It's firm 6 as opposed to firm 8 in the Belmont race, firm 9 in the Diana, suggesting that was significantly softer. So what are we going to be looking at in terms of condition? I just visually haven't been impressed with Rougier like at all, and I'm kind of ready to make a play against in this spot. Lily Pond makes all the sense in the world for all the reasons that you said, and she probably will not be too far back, but I don't know. I'm wondering if Princess Grace doesn't have a chance to just get the jump. I mean, Dalika, when you look at when she's shown the proper early speed she'd need to get the lead in here, she stopped. And I wonder if they don't notice that and decide to be a little bit conservative with her in terms of the pace. And if Giroux and Princess Grace can't just get the run of things. Lily Pond won't be beating me, but I'm a little bit interested in Princess Grace from here.
The other thing I'll mention about Dalika. Oh, first things first, hot and dry. Hot and dry. So you're probably going to be dealing with firm turf. Again, the turf course just in general is a bit of an unknown down there based on everything that's going on and the fact that this is a one-off at Churchill Downs. Dalika, I think the worst thing that ever happened to her was running as well as she did in those 1.5 and 1 3/8 races. Because I don't think she's actually a long distance horse. I think she's like 7/8, 1 mile. And I mean, I know you don't get many opportunities to run 7/8, but I know Fairgrounds, they'll run 7.5 every once in a while, and certainly a Gulfstream. But I just don't think Dalika really wants to go that far. Your Princess Grace piece, you're going to be looking at the third choice who could potentially have a tactical edge on the field. I certainly can't sit here and knock that whatsoever. I do wonder if when push comes to shove, if class prevails and maybe, I mean, where did Lily Pond stack up as far as O'Brien's runners this year are concerned? Is she well thought of?
I think she's thought of. I think she's well thought of. I mean, you look at the pedigree alone, and you see the spots she's been in. She's clearly not any mug, but
right.
They also haven't given her a grade 1 shot. And typically, the ones who they get really excited about sending over here, there's 1 or 2 reasons why. They're either going to be like super duper suited to USA conditions, and I think that applied to a Santa Barbara, or they're like, this is where she can win a grade 1, and it'll say that when her baby sells at the sales in a couple of years. They're not going to. You have that grade 1 on there. I mean, it makes her so valuable. So it's a really impressive accomplishment if she can get this done, and she absolutely fits. I just wonder if it'll all depend on prices too. I mean, I feel like she's going to probably be shorter than 5-2. And believe me, I like her. She's the other horse I'm going to use. But I think that Princess Grace's last race was really, really fast. And I know it was earned with a beautiful on the lead setup. And I know it was faster than anything she'd run before. But she'd run well enough in the Goldakova, in the Matriarch, that figure doesn't seem wrong to me. I just think she might be a little bit underrated, I guess.
No argument from me there. I agree that she could be on the more underrated side. I'll be very curious to see. I mean, again, if we're talking about this race, like it could potentially be on the lacking pace side, or basically who's going to blink, who's going to go. I think the worst thing that could happen is they go so slow that Lily Pond takes up the trip that she had last out. Because if she's in that position, sitting just off Princess Grace, I'm going to take my chances with O'Brien in this spot. But again, this is a gambling game, and you're going to be the third choice in a 5-horse field with a horse that is not that far off, the top 2 from a talent standpoint. So I'm not going to sit here and dispute it. I'm going to go with Lily Pond just because I really liked what I saw, and I think she could fit well in here. And I also, again, I'm on the record. I Rougier, and I didn't realize that about that piece you had brought up with the sort of the how firm is firm from Timeform. that would continue to sort of bolster the argument that Rogier wants some cut. And I know she's going to get that in Lexington in November.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if she can bounce back and be a different horse. She's going to have to be. I mean, she had a pretty good setup last time and was, well held by her stablemates. So, Princess Grace, I think she's just a little bit interesting. One other point I'll make about her is when you go back and look at that matriarch run, it's probably even a little bit better than it looks. I mean, no pace on that day, and she still, has that angle. Another one of those things we've said 1,800 times on the show, but closing into the blue time form US fractions, going the mile. And then I always like it when their pace figures, the early pace figures improve, and then the final figure doesn't only drop off, but is actually a career best. It's a little bit weird for a 5-year-old mare to get so much better, but there's a world in which it happens, and I think I'd be very surprised if the market comes for her too much. I think she's the value, but believe me, there'll be almost as much I have invested in Princess Grace winning, I will have covered with Lily Pond, either in horizontals if I play that way, or 5-3, 3-5 exactas. I think that's a very smart way to go as well. Let's talk about the other win in your in race. We just got about 8 minutes left. We've got a few. We'll do a couple of comments first. Charles, if you're still watching, I don't understand exactly what you're saying here enough to post this, but if you elaborate a little bit more, maybe we'll get to it. Or if you want to discuss further, hit us up on the contact page in themoneypodcast.com. I think it's very interesting to do those type of figure comparisons you're doing there. But for starters, I don't know if you mean Ragazin or Thorograph, and it's hard for me to get my head around it here in real time. Vishon says hello and asks us what we think about Ben Bang. Ben Bang is scratched a little bit later today, so we think he will come back and run in another race. I have no further thoughts about Ben Bang than that. Rob giving us props on the winner. John, follow us in as well. We appreciate that very much. We got a few people saying hi, including Rick. We'll say hi back. Rick wants to know what other races we're showing. We just show the contest races live. So since it's all Saratoga, we just had the one race in this window. That's all we'll show. I see no one lobbying in the comments for all Saratoga. So next week, we're going to do a little bit differently. We're going to line up with the rest of the Horse Players calendar, and we'll do something fun, and we'll have a lot more racing on this show. We can get, 3 or 4 races, Matt, when we do the format?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, timing wise, if we do it correctly, we can usually get, I would say, 3 to 4 live races covered in here. So we'll get a little bit more gambling personally involved, and hopefully help. It's nice when you give out winners. I'm sitting here going, why can't we have another race? But then there were the weeks where we don't give out anything. I go, we only need one. We don't need to.
We're undefeated today, and we agreed, which isn't an always thing. So we'll take it. But yeah, if you want more information, just in general, though, I'll point you to the Matt Bernier Show, In the Money Players Podcast, and all the stuff we've got cooking on the In the Money Media Network. We were talking a little bit before about foreign racing, talking more specifically about Ireland, but and the big racing festival at York coming up next week. Really a fun show to check out from this week on the network. From the owner's box, Billy Koch and Michelle Yu talking to my friend Minty Farquhar about GBRI, Great British Racing International, and the opportunities they have for USA owners to go over there and buy horses or even campaign horses over there and get some of those great experiences. GBRI put out a lot of good stuff, and it's a good way for people looking to get involved. And these big racing festivals that we're covering more and more on the In the Money Media Network, and more have Breeders' Cup tie-ins. It's a good way. I think it's nice to not be operating from too far behind the curve when it comes to evaluating these European shippers. It's kind of nice to be able to form some opinions throughout the year by watching the tape and reading the news. I mean, it's the more you can sort of follow it. It's not that many meetings you have to be across, as they would say. We would say be on top of, I suppose, to really get an edge when it comes to evaluating these foreign shippers who are going to be turning up on our shores at Keeneland in just a couple months' time. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, usually the big horses point to a few handful of races and meets, and you accordingly devote your time to those, and the rest of it, you focus on the stuff happening here stateside. But yeah, you have those handful of meets that the big ones or the potential runners in the Breeders' Cup run in. Pay attention to those, and then if some kind of curveball comes your way, the week or two leading into the Breeders' Cup, then you've at least got time where you're not scrambling to go through all the European form.
Yeah, you'll always be surprised by something that turns up, especially 2-year-old races are a little trickier. But, even those, there's trends year in, year out that have been established and you can follow along with. Once again, not a big field when it comes to the 4-Star Dave, the grade 1 mile inner turf race. That is the other win you're in race. This one, of course, for the Breeders' Cup Mile. There's been some real important pointers from this race over the years as it pertains to the Breeders' Cup Mile. And I mean, I'll start with the obvious. It's a little bit surprising here that we didn't see more participation. It's not like there's one horse in here that's scaring everybody away either.
Well, debatable.
You think they're that scared of Regal Glory or Mason or whom?
Yeah, I look, I haven't given her the credit she deserves. If you go through and really pick that form apart, I mean, Regal Glory is a monster right now. And I just don't, I mean, I have no interest in trying to beat her in this race. You brought up with Princess Grace, the possibility of a 5-year-old running at the peak of her career. It's usually kind of an unlikely scenario. I can say that about this mare at 6. I mean, she's never been better. And again, I'm guilty of never giving her probably the full marks that she deserves. This form lately, I have no interest in trying to beat her, even with Mason. I mean, he looks like a decent horse, but I think she would need to regress and somebody else would need to jump up to beat her this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a crazy way to look at it. Let's go through them. Actually, I mean, it's a short enough field. Let's just
we got to turn and burn. Then we got 2 minutes.
Oh, we only have 2 minutes. All right, we're going to go very quickly. So Casa Creed is a very good horse coming here off a win in the Jaipur, stretching out. Does he have the same kick going a mile? That's my question for you.
No, he is a one-turn horse through and through. I bet he gets a piece of this thing. Maybe he even threatens. I couldn't back him to win.
Front Run the Fed. This is a horse that I think is going to be probably far back and probably doesn't look fast enough or classy enough.
I can say the same thing about Front Run the Fed is Casa Creed light, where shorter is better. Mile, I don't think is competitive at this point.
Regal Glory has been absolutely superb. How much of a challenge is it to not just be facing her own sex, though? That's a little bit of my question for her. And then the other question is, she's won with a variety of pace setups, which obviously is super duper impressive. But I don't know. I worry that she could get just like a weird trip in a false short field, weird paced race. I'm scared she's going to be odds on, and I'm not sure if I need that. I mean, you've already sort of thrown your hat in the ring for her, but do my concerns bother you at all?
Well, I mean, let me clarify it. From a gambling standpoint, I'm not touching her. I think she's going to be overbet. But I don't need to bet a 4 to 5 shot, in a 5-horse field. It doesn't really do anything for me. But I'm looking at her now where I just have no interest in trying to beat her. I like her versatility. If the pace is moderate, she goes. If it's hot, she rallies from off of it. I'm not someone who's ever bothered by the girls taking on the boys. Really doesn't mean much to me. Is she fast or not? She is. Weight-wise, if you're a weight fan, she's in at 119. Mason's in at 23. Get Smokin's in at 20. I don't know. Casa Creed's in at 22. I mean, she gets weight from some of these horses. Again, I'm not the biggest weight guy, but there's nothing here for me to look at her and be like, oh, well, now what? I think she's raging form right now, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if she's a major player at Keeneland in November.
Mason's gotten some short, some very easy trips. Going to probably also be pretty short. Could also get a great trip in here. I'd probably need more than 2 to 1 to pick, honestly. But seems like the public is going to make this one the main danger.
Yeah, he would be sort of the opinion for me to fade. He could certainly be as good, if not better, than Regal Glory. Just prove it to me, and at a short price, I don't need to find out.
I'll probably bet Get Smoking. I mean, this is a horse who has plenty of finish for a speed horse. Did not get it done against considerably weaker the last day, but did attack a pace that looked to be coming apart a little bit at the end. I mean, if the 8-1 morning line guess is right, I feel like this is the value. I don't know that we're going to see that kind of number on him, though, because I do think he's the clear speed. But this would be my pick if you made me make one.
Cold Punch, 3-5 exacta. Get Smoking goes. Regal Glory runs him down late. You know what? We can even... Am I bold enough to say throw out Mason and go Cold Punch try of Regal Glory, Get Smoking, Casa Creed?
I like it.
That's my lean. That would be my lean anyway. If I was so scratchy and itchy that I needed to make a bet, that's what it would be. It'd probably be like a $20 cold try of Regal Glory, Get Smoking, Casa Creed.
Great stuff, Matt. Always a pleasure spending these Horseplayer happy hours with you. We'll thank our friends at the Breeders' Cup, Haley Amos, Justin McDonald. Hey, how about Haley's dad yesterday getting a big 4,000? Great to see her on hand, being a big part of celebrating that, sending out some great stuff on social about that as well. Horseplayers.com. That's where we play these games. We didn't even really talk about the concept this week. We've done that a lot this year, though. But, it's for a great cause. We're benefiting Thoroughbred Aftercare. $20,000 added to the pot. And we appreciate the players for supporting us. We're going to keep this rock and rolling. Appreciate all the comments. Sorry we didn't get to all of them. We'll get to do more of that next week. It's easier when we have a producer who isn't me. We will not have me producing again this season, I don't think. Hopefully, for your viewers' sake, we won't anyway. But yeah, that's it. Any closing thought before I send this thing home, Matt?
No, looking forward to this weekend. Hopefully we get some big performances in those two races. And again, we inch closer and closer to the Travers and the Pacific Classic and the Jockey Club. This is the time. Start to formulate. I know it sounds crazy. It's middle of August. Start handicapping for the Breeders' Cup. Start thinking down the road, like we talked about with that classic pool. Start drawing up scenarios and how the race shape could look, who could go where, those sort of things. It's going to make your life, Breeders' Cup week, the week leading in, a heck of a lot easier.
Oddschecker.com is a website where you can find future prices if you want horses to start paying attention to and doing that work that Matt suggests. I absolutely second that emotion. Matt Bernier will thank you again. We will thank our friends here at the Farrier Bar at the Brentwood for putting me up today. This show's been a co-production of In the Money Media and the Breeders' Cup. On our side, our business managers, Drew Coatney, our chief creative officers, Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.